There's an important case pending right now in the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Virginia called Winnebago Tribe of Nebraska versus U.S. Department of the Army. Winnebago is fighting for the return of 2 Native children's bodies from Carlisle Indian Industrial School under the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, or NAGPRA. Carlisle was the first government-run Indian boarding school, and it served as the model for what would become a system of 408 similar federal Indian boarding schools nationwide. The federal government operated Carlisle from 1879 until 1918. It and other Indian boarding schools were an integral part of one of the darkest eras of federal Indian law and policy. During that era, the United States was bent on forcing Native people to assimilate into the colonizers' culture, with the overall goal being to simplify the United States taking of tribal nations' lands and resources. Children were forcibly removed from their families, including by police, and often without parental consent. Congress enacted laws to compel Native parents to send their children, including through withholding treaty-promised rations. Once placed at these so-called schools, children were subjected to corporal punishment that included solitary confinement, flogging, and withholding food. Children were also forced into manual labor, including young children made to do heavy industrial work. They lived with disease, malnourishment, poor diet and water quality, overcrowding, and lack of health care. The federal government has thus far identified 53 marked and unmarked burial sites containing Native children at different federal Indian boarding school locations. Tribal nations have sought the repatriation of their children from these boarding school graveyards, including making requests to the U.S. Department of the Army, which now controls Carlisle. The Army has taken the position it has no obligation under NAGPRA to repatriate these children, asserting that NAGPRA's repatriation provisions only apply to, quote, holdings or collections, and that the graveyard is not a holding or collection. The Army also asserts NAGPRA does not require exhuming graves. Instead, the Army says it will apply its own disinterment process under Army Regulation 290-5, designed for service members and prisoners of war. But this is not the equitable alternative the Army claims it to be. The Catawba Nation, a member of USET SPF, is one tribal nation that requested the Army repatriate its child, Wade Ayers, under NAGPRA. The Army refused, instead forcing Catawba to use the Army's disinterment process. In the end, the Army, upon disinterring Wade's grave, learned that it had misplaced his remains, likely when it moved the cemetery in the 1920s. The Army's own disinterment process has provided Catawba no clear avenue to bring Wade home. NAGPRA was carefully designed by Congress to reunite tribal nations with their people's remains, and it contains meaningful protections the Army's disinterment process does not. For example, application of NAGPRA's inventory, information sharing, and tribal consultation requirements could help bring Catawba's child home. The Winnebago Tribe of Nebraska brought suit to force the Army to afford our children at Carlisle the protections of NAGPRA, instead of perpetuating their treatment as militants and prisoners of war. USET SPF prepared and filed an amicus brief with the Catawba Nation supporting Winnebago. This is an important case for all of Indian country, and one that USET SPF is committed to following.